Welcome to Free-Form Conversations with Michal, where we discuss the Pola method and other approaches to wellness. If you know in your heart that self-healing is possible and you wish to explore new ways to get in touch with your body and assist it in doing its amazing work, join us. I think you'll enjoy these conversations. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Freeform Conversations with Michal. Today I have a very special guest. Somebody actually gave me the idea of starting this podcast. I don't know if you meant to or not, but that's how it rolled. Today I'm here with Dr. Jeffrey Friedman, who is a clinical psychologist in Central Coast, California. He's been practicing psychology, for several decades. And he's also a clinical social worker and a medical evaluator for the state of California. I just want to welcome you, Jeffrey, and ask you to please elaborate, say whatever you feel like about yourself, to introduce yourself to our listeners. And from there, we'll begin our conversation. Welcome. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Well, originally I was drawn to the Pola method and to you, Michal, because of several things. One is the subtle awareness that the Pola method has to the body, and it was kind of a corollary to what I do as a therapist, to teach people and work myself into a very, very subtle awareness and to staying with some type of flow. And taking your class was wonderful. I mean, I look forward to it because it was I could deal with my own privacy. I didn't have to be social, and I could get into what my flow was. And you were just so great orchestrating, at the same time allowing whatever was going to happen. So I do that also in therapy. And I think the therapists that I admire also are working with movement, that nothing is stationary. You know, in Gestalt therapy, it's all about tuning into what your organs, what you're feeling, the very, very subtle things, going below your programming or going, to where your programming is not affecting you, and then just being new and original. My mentor, who was in the Bataan Death March in a prisoner of war, would tell me, every time you see a patient, even if it's the same patient, week after week, you have to pretend you never saw the person before. You have to go in new. And that's very hard because we have all these assumptions. And he would tell me he said, even if you get a Jewish man coming in, don't think you know him just because he's Jewish. And it was like, how do you get? And so I use that concept of new and awareness. Even in my own life, when I wake up in the morning, I try to remember, what's the first moment my consciousness comes into my body, right? There is a moment of moving from the dream, from the sleep to the body. I want to catch it. And how do I create this day as a very, very new day? And finally, speaking of movement, there's a couple of things. One, no one talks about Freud anymore, and he's kind of put away like an old piece of furniture, but Freud,
That's not true.
Well, in California, but Freud did something amazing in terms of new and staying with the current, because therapy now is a relationship where you develop a bond, a trust, hopefully, and you share, but you're sharing with another person. Freud had you laying on the couch, and you didn't look at him, and you just gave him your train of awareness, whatever was coming up right then. And I thought, that's brilliant, because he could see how your mind, emotions are functioning right here, right new. You're not trying to develop a rapport with him.
Yeah.
Right?
That's amazing, because also all of a sudden when you spoke about how they were lying down and not looking at Freud, I thought to myself, that's how we do it in Pola, because my clients don't have to see me. They only have to hear me. But the most important thing is that I see and hear them. And also the idea of new, like each session is a new one. We cannot prepare for them. And whatever shows up and comes up, we expect it to be completely new and surprising and refreshing, you know? So maybe we are an evolution of Freud in a way.
Yeah. The other thing is what I love about the Paula technique and some from the Bates method, how it fits into my psychology is that a love for the curious, let the curious move you into some enthusiasm. Don't let your eyes stay stuck. And I use that with people who are stuck in their brain. I said, just allow your eyes, spend a couple hours, spend a day, spend a minute, just go with your eyes. Okay, let that lead you. And it transcends their regular thought pattern. It breaks their habitual thought pattern because you're really living right now in the new by just following what's curious. I'll say, look, take a vacation day where you only do what you want to do and just what's enthusiastic, what thrills you, but allow your eyes to say, oh, that would be interesting to do, or that would be interesting, and to get that flow going. And I think that's what, when you're looking for chain reactions, you just gotta, what's coming up.
Absolutely. I think what you were just describing, the way I'd call it, would be living your life free form. So you're constantly attentive to what is it that's going on with me? What is it that my inside is seeking or enjoying? And if I keep following this enjoyment or I don't know, flow of fun, of curiosity and play, then my day will kind of evolve and it will be hopefully a very pleasant day. I mean, life happens, but you know, we have the intention of doing it in a way that is pleasant and nice for us. Is that correct?
It is. And I think we're working towards or developing for my field, a psychological core, and call it what you want, call it your super conscious instead of your subconscious, that knows more than you know, and that one is trying to guide you. And how you communicate with that core is so critical in life. And so when I was first getting into your teachings in the Paula method, I would just look forward to the evening or the middle of the night, whereas when I would just allow my body to move and express whatever it needs to express. And I think people need that. You know, I tell people, don't worry about sleeping. Just do what your body wants to do in the bed. You'll feel better in the morning because your body got to express itself.
Express itself, exactly. Words of wisdom. And also that, interestingly enough, when the body needs sleep, that's what it will express, this kind of heaviness and tiredness. And we kind of, if we allow ourselves to follow the body's cue, that's exactly what will happen. We will just simply fall asleep very naturally and very easily.
Yeah, I tell people, don't wait for sleep to happen. You know, I mean, there is a rhythm of like a circadian rhythm, about an hour and a half. I said, if you miss that, the next sleep train is not going to come back for another hour and a half. So go out of bed, do something productive, and then you'll start to feel a little drowsy in about, an hour and 20 minutes. But so you can't force that sleep cycle. I want to talk about psychological chain reactions, because that's what interests me, and that's what I work with people and myself. And so what is a psychological chain reaction or reflex? There's those that we can create, and there's those that we need to either eliminate or adjust, but we need to get into that level of understanding. In other words, I'll find with myself, if I'm ruminating or my thoughts are getting heavy and depressing, my head will be bowing down. And so throughout the day, I want to say, what position is my head in? Because it'll tell me where my thoughts are. So I got to keep picking it up. So I'm creating that reflex. And I'll tell patients, and thoughts have weight. And if you think of something very distressing or disturbing, it's going to bring you the head down. Or for me, that's the reflex. But when you're light and joyous, those thoughts are like bubbles. So what other example of chain reactions? And some that I can teach, and some that we have to follow, and some that are universal. I was in a dance group, and the teacher had us open your lips and pant rapidly, and it mobilizes anger in most people. And if you think of when you were younger, or when you had to fight or something, the lips are open and you're panting through the mouth. So for people who have a hard time with anger, I'll have them practice that type of a reflex, because that's kind of built in, right? And one other one that's built in, and that's scientifically built in, is just dropping your jaw. And I'll have the patient, look, if I teach you one thing to relax, the only thing I want you to take away is 50 times a day, drop your jaw. And when you drop your jaw, if I had you hooked up to biofeedback, your brain waves turn from beta, which is activity and stress, to alpha. So actually dropping your jaw is neurofeedback. And also drop your jaw. And if you want, you can let it kind of flow into your shoulders. And I'll tell them on the refrigerator, put signs in your car, drop your jaw, It's the only relaxation you need to work on, because it creates a great chain reaction and a brain reaction of the alpha waves. So and then what else can we create? So if someone has fear, I'll want them to learn to paradox that, as well as pain, and have a little silent smile into that fear, into that pain. You're creating a different neurochemistry when you're doing a smile rather than the reflex. And I'll go through every disorder from anxiety, depression, PTSD, and there'll be body movements and reflexes. And the one thing I want people to do is know at all times, if you can remember, when you're concave and when you're convex. So when you're very frightened or feeling like a victim, you become like the inside of a ball. You're just waiting for the next thing to happen, right? But the opposite is convex. You're assertive. You're looking to life. You're jumping in, and you're doing. There's a street in my town called Higuera Street. It's the main street where there's shops. And many times I've given people exercises. I want you to go and walk. You're going to walk 4 blocks down Higuera. And when you're walking down, to the lower end of the street, I want you to just be kind of like an object. People are looking at you. You're going to be a little self-conscious or a lot of self-conscious. You're being seen. Okay. Now cross the street. Now go back up. I want you to look at everything, looking out. So that's kind of the example of the concave and convex. And if you're depressed and if you're anxious and if you're frightened, you're probably very, very concave. You're just waiting. How can I get through this? When's the next shoe going to fall?
This is so interesting. I have to tell you, I don't know if I want to go into this, but I will just mention it and then maybe we can revisit with it. When I moved to the United States, one of the things that were hardest for me was not looking at people. Because in Israel, it is part of the culture that when you walk in the street, or it doesn't matter wherever you are, you're looking at people all the time. So your gaze moves from one person to another. If you're walking towards a person in the street, you straighten your gaze straight at them, and they'll do the same. You won't say hello. So now after living in the United States for so many years, when I do that, I say hello to people on the street in Israel, and they're like, what happened? Like, it feels like an attack. Like, we're looking at each other, but we're not talking to each other. And when I first moved here and I looked at people, they'd say hi immediately, or how are you doing? And I was like, why are they talking to me? It took me a few years to understand that it's because I'm looking straight at them. For me, this is just a cultural mechanism. This is how you do walking in the street. For them, it was um, like a penetration to their
Yeah,
existence, to their privacy. Now I
yeah,
don't do that anymore. But if I'm a little tensed or a little out of my balance, I will go back to staring at people, because for me, this is the safe place. And it
yeah,
is very interesting how you explained this exercise that you give your clients of walking up and down that street and being in different states. And I'm thinking also how profound such things are also in our cultural experience.
yeah.
So
And
again, and not, we don't
no, that's
necessarily have to
great.
talk
No,
about it,
that's so
but
fascinating. But you bring up something really important, and that is a safe place. And for years and years, I would do hypnosis and imagery and try to give people a safe place, a special room, a green room where their relatives, the people they love. And now still everyone needs to develop a safe place inside, right? Even if you have to tweak it, you had to tweak it in America because whoa, it's not safe anymore. When I look at people, they're kind of, I don't really want to talk to them right now. I'm walking.
it's not that. I actually really appreciate the fact that this is the response. So instead of like the Israeli, like, what are you doing saying hi to me? They're really, people are out, like, I don't know, there is kindness in it. Like, how are you doing? I see that you're looking at me. Is something the matter? I find it to be very kind. So it's not about me not wanting to talk to them. It's just, why do they keep talking to me? This is something that I'm doing.
Right, right, right. But with the safe place, I think we all have to develop an ability and do it when we're not under stress. Because when you're under stress, you can't learn these things. You can't learn to reduce pain when you're in a lot of pain. You have to develop the tools before the pain. And so I'll ask people, to go back to powerful moments in their life and put those videos into their safe place. And any object, anything that's brought them power, comfort, love, have it inside and go back as often as you can, during the day to that safe place.
This is amazing. May I add something to that safe
Oh, yeah,
place?
yeah, yeah.
I want to add the Paula point of view, or at least the way
Very
I
good.
look. I find that when people connect to their body and they also trust what their body has to offer them, meaning that when things evolve, when things come up or come out, what would be more correct to say? They're not afraid of them, but they look at them as something that is interesting, something that we might want to explore, something that we may want to, you know, be in interaction with. A lot of trust is being built there, is built there, and we kind of find trust and comfort in being with ourselves, because we learn, and I'm just going to kind of do like a spoiler alert here. What we learn is that our body has our best interest in mind, always. Most of us are really, really afraid of what's inside there because, I don't know, again, cultural conditioning, I don't know, we learn to not trust that inside. But as a matter of fact, when we connect to these inside or inner messages, we find out that all the healing and kindness and comfort actually come from inside. And so when we learn to connect with that, we learn to trust it. And then we feel more comfortable just being with ourselves. And it could be anywhere in the world,
I
right?
used to love doing family therapy. I'm doing a few now, but not too many. And even with, my own kids, because families can be together for years and be alone because they don't drop into that honest, safe place. They have these roles, and to bring people, give me a family that's fighting and bring them into my room with most of the time there's love underneath all that tension, and then it becomes a safe place to let out that love. But people will go for 10 years never being able to connect with that level of deeper love.
This is exactly it, that we can live this entire life with this body, not ever trusting it, and not knowing that the treasure inside, and I hope it doesn't sound like, I don't know, spiritual BS.
You're going to get thrown off the air. TikTok is putting us down now.
That really the treasure is inside. There is so much love inside, so much compassion, so much forgiveness, but we have to allow ourselves to meet like a family, exactly that. I think I find it's mind-blowing. I think a family therapy is the best example here, because in a way we have a relationship with our body like a family member. I studied listening to the eyes. This is the method that I work with when I work with people's vision. And we always say, like, those eyes are like your children. Now, hello, let's have an introduction. Here is right eye, here is left eye, and here is me. And I'm the parent in the triangle here. And it is my role to find this compassion and understanding in me towards those two parts, those two significant parts of my body. But to be honest, it's not only about the eyes, it's everything. It's my body, and different parts of my body are like different people, and they have their own character, they have their own tendencies, their own needs, their own ways in which they like to be treated. And if we learn that, then all of a sudden we have one very happy family.
Yeah. And I think what I like to do with myself and patients is, how do you break up your old habits so that you're back to that? I'll tell patients, I'll challenge them, I want you to reduce your mirror time. Only allow yourself 3 times to look in the mirror today.
Oh, wow.
And very hard.
It
because
is.
There to judge himself, but now it's like going on a fast. You can't look, and so you can start developing, who you are differently. And I'll tell people, find something when you're in high school that gave you power. If you're on the football team, and bring those things back to break up the pattern, because people are very afraid to live. I mean, me included. And there's a wonderful movie. I just had my kids see it for the first time. It's called The Legend of 1900. And it's about a man who is basically born on a ship, Tim Roth, wonderful actor, and he grows up with the cabin people, and he becomes a wonderful pianist. But the part of the parable is, he never wants to get off the ship because he knows everything on the ship. But if he goes out, into New York, there's all these streets, there's all these possibilities. So we're all kind of stuck usually on this, what keeps us safe. But that's not the design of life. Bob Dylan says, if you're not busy being born, you're busy dying.
Oh my God, this is so true.
Right? And so everybody's hunkering down with what kind of retirement, as if they're not going to die, and as if they're not going to lose everything material. And so they don't work so much on the spirit, on the flame that hopefully maybe they'll take with them. They just work on staying on your own ship, keeping all your preserves there, and hunkering down. So we got to fire ourselves up and fire people up, and there's a word that's not used anymore. It's called hardihood. It was from the 1920s, 1910s, 1920s, and it's like chutzpah. It's like developing a sense of confidence and courage to be convex, not concave, to take the right risks, not being crazy, but you can't get too comfortable. Comfort is a bad drug.
This is one thing I will kind of like challenge you about, because while working with the body, I actually find that being in a place of comfort is very important. I never want to get my clients out of comfort while working with their body, because I always want them to feel very, very safe. And yes, tell me.
No. I totally agree. That safe place, you want it by building more and more of that comfort, then you have the energy to have teeth to go out in the world.
Exactly, because the body will naturally want that. So sometimes, and I think you saw that in the group classes, there are people who are very, very weak, and they criticize themselves for that, right? Instead of going with that flow that the body is weak, the bodies need very, very gentle work. They're trying to kind of like umple up, I don't know what to call it, like put more energy into their work. And the only result that they receive is that they're even more exhausted. And I always repeat that. You're in a group class, do not look at other people. Each one of us is doing his or her own journey, and you're in your own body. You cannot be in somebody else's body. Yeah. All we can do here is to respect. However, once people respect that, and they really go with the gentleness and the slowness and the low energy that their body needs to express at that time, all of a sudden, there will be tons of energy coming from the inside, because the body got exactly what it needed, which is rest, slowness, low energy, and respect for that state. As you said, like every day is new. Every moment that we work with each other is new. When we always respect that, the body can really rejuvenate on its own. And that's not coming out of discomfort. Actually, this comes out of complete comfort. So that's what I said. I want to challenge you in that, because I in my work, I cannot do that. Like, we cannot do this dissonance of pushing people over, because we will mess up the work.
There was an old theory that you don't hear anymore in psychology. It was called the paradoxical theory of change. And it's basically saying what you're saying, that first you have to own where you are. I'm feeling very weak. I'm feeling exhausted. That's perfect. And in therapy or with myself, that's okay. Let yourself be more weak, be more exhausted, get into it, because that's the only place the new will arise from. If you stay with what's honestly going on, and don't be ashamed and don't try to avoid, go deeper into. That's where the pain that you think is there is where the jewels and the nuclear energy is.
Yes, exactly. So maybe we're talking about a different point of view of comfort or discomfort. And I think perhaps what you're offering here is similar. Again, I'm translating it to Paula, okay? Or to Michal's Paula. I'll speak for myself.
No.
That is, if I always want to stay in the comfort of my discomfort, nothing is going to change. Exactly. But if I'm willing to look deep into it and to play with it and to be curious about it, so yes, it will be a little challenging or uncomfortable. However, then I'll be able to connect to what is in a very authentic way, in a very respectful way, in a way that's really noticing and feeling what is going on. And then we will move comfortably to a new place. But first, we have to decide that we are willing to change.
Yeah.
Is that more like that? More like what you meant?
I see many people who stay in marriages that have died out of fear of going and being honest with themselves and their partner. And they're living in a prehistoric museum because they don't want to go out, because they haven't developed the inner confidence of where they're at that moves them out. And it's sad, because to them it's very dangerous to think about any change in the relationship.
There's a lot of sadness in me when anyone at any situation talk about separation, and it's funny because my parents separated when I was in my 40s, I think, like later in life. And I grew up in a stable home with mother and father that, they not only that they had their 4 kids together, they also worked together, they had a career together. They ran their lives very much, together. But for some reason, this is one thing that always makes me very sad. So once you started talking about it, I just got into my place of sadness. So in a way, I feel like it's blocking my clear thoughts. So I'll let you continue.
Let me talk a little bit. Because there's a couple of things. There's a movie called My Dinner with Andre. It's a great movie with Wallace.
Say again the name.
My Dinner with Andre. My Dinner with Andre. The whole movie is shot in a very nice restaurant in Manhattan, and the 2 men, Wallace Shawn and Andre Gregory, are talking, but they talk about such deep, deep things that I started a men's group called After My Dinner with Andre, based on that a long time ago. Right. But one of the things Wallace Shawn says, that he could be with that people have become furniture. If they've living together and things haven't been changing or been challenging or growing, taking risks, they become like furniture. And Wallace Shawn says his face could turn into a big monster's face and his girlfriend wouldn't even notice, because you don't see that person anymore. Right. And Andre Gregory says, he had that feeling of wanting to leave his wife. And so he couldn't take it anymore. And so he got in his car and he's driving hundreds of miles. And then he realized, but I love her, I want to be with her. But he had to leave to come back.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? He had to get to that place in order to, to turn around. And I worked with a Walter Kempler, a psychiatrist, family therapist. And his theory was, for a relationship to work, you have to have 2 things. You have to have union, where they come together like in the beginning and they're like one, the most common denominator. And then they both have to be individuation. And then you have to come together. You have to have, I see couples, one could live in Montana, the other one here, and have 2 houses. They get together. It's wonderful. They've created this union, individualization.
Yes.
So that no one's smothered and no one's too alone either.
Yeah. You remind me of something. I don't know even how. I have a feeling that there was something that I really wanted to comment on from what you said earlier, but then I got kind of like washed with sadness and I forgot what I wanted to say. But now you remind me of something that I studied. I studied special ed. I studied many things, but my last my last degree was in special education. And in our psychology lesson, we had to read the book. I forget the name of the book in English because I read it in Hebrew, but it's by Harville Hendrix is his name, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, so he wrote a book for couples and couples that are about to break up.
He used to teach at Esalen a lot, but I never saw him.
Anyways, talks about what is the added benefit. Why would nature want people to live as couples? Why would nature create this amazing energy of falling in love and wanting to bond with another human being? Why? This is a lot of energy, right? Why would nature put so much emphasis on this, on falling in love with another person and creating this union of being together, this couplehood? And what he said in the book is that when we are together, And when each side kind of brings the good or the better in the other side, people have more energy to create and to do for their society. So one person alone can do so much, and another person alone can do so much. But this union allows them to kind of like reproduce. And it doesn't have to be children, by the way. It's not about reproduction of more humans.
It's creativity, creating.
Exactly. It's the creative force that people can just create more than they would be able to do on their own. And sometimes I think in couplehood, it's just having that other person who really believes in you. They don't have to do anything. You'll do the work yourself. But you come back to this safe place where somebody else really believes in you or trusts you. And so the way you go out to the world is with this, somebody has your back. And so you come out to the world with this additional energy.
No, and the one piece of advice I give to every parent, if I get into that kind of, is no matter what's going on with your child, you have to give off the aura and the energy is you're going to be successful. You're going to make it.
Yes.
And that is kind of what you're talking about. If you have a good partnership, that it's unconditional love and unconditional belief that they're going to be successful. If you start giving your doubts about what's going to happen to my child, my son, my teenager, that's what they're going to input. You have to give it the you're going to make it.
It is so interesting what you just said about parents. So, of course, psychologically, there is no doubt, right? We want parents to be able to give or nurture their kids with this confidence that they know that things are going to be all right. It is extremely interesting to see that children will manifest physical conditions if their parents do not believe that they can. So if the parents have some concern, they worry about something, they themselves weren't able to achieve something in life and they're afraid, or they think that something can inhibit the success of their child, they will express it somehow in their behavior, in their, energy,
their symptoms, in their
kid. And yes, and the child will show physical symptoms, either vision issues, breathing issues, and others. And when you work with the parents and you help them kind of understand that that's their story, not their child, the children will heal without even working with that child. You don't even have to see the child. You only work with the parents. So this is something so powerful. And yes, I agree. I mean, I wish more parents knew that, but I think really we more and more come to a place.
Yeah, it depends on the parents' level of development.
Exactly.
Because
I think we see more and more of that.
Yeah. And they could, that's why they could be so mean or cruel or harm, because they have never worked on that part. That's an undigested part now comes out in their asthmatic child or whatever it is. And so when I would work with children, it would be, everything was symbolic. Draw a monster, any kind of monster. It could be divorce monster. It could be the death monster. You want to get to the scary thing and find out. And I came across, I think I have it, pictures of, did work with a child who would draw horrible scary dinosaurs with flame. And yet in school, he was very, very quiet and sweet, but he was encopretic. In other words, he would soil his pants. All his anger was coming out. And so when we did therapy and did the drawing, he started getting better. We would interpret his drawings. And in all the drawings, there was a little infant face. There's a dinosaur, there's an infant face. And it turned out he was taken to a hospital where his brother had died at birth. And he somehow incorporated this baby fear and anger, right? And when he started, drawing and letting it out, he became a behavioral problem. And the teacher would call me up and say, "What have you done to my student. He was so sweet, but then he stopped soiling his pants because he was expressing himself. And
That's amazing. What an amazing story. You know, we work with in Papresis with the Pola method a lot. This is such a wonderful story. And it brings up the conflict or the imbalance between what is more important here, the child's behavior in school and how comfortable or uncomfortable the teachers are, or the fact that finally he's able to express that huge monster inside, something so scary that he had to hold until it just explodes out, right? In a way that it's undeveloped.
Yeah, it's a delicate art to raise a child, because you don't want to automatically imprint everything that you have, that you are, you want them to get the good, but not take all the other stuff. And that's not easy. There's no book for that. It's case by case. How can, sometimes the best teacher is the one that doesn't scold, doesn't bring it out, let it come from them.
Yes.
Right.
I agree with that.
And I work a lot with,
let it come from them.
yeah. And that takes great patience, and because they push your button, even unconsciously, they're gonna push your button. Look at my child, he's not doing this, he's not keeping up. Blah, 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 blah.
Absolutely. We need so much respect for children and people in general. I think this patience comes from trust. When we trust that things sometimes take their own course and their own time, but at the right time, things will happen. So we have to kind of like hold together and be compassionate and patient and trust and trust and trust. And it will happen.
But it's the quality of the parents' love. And that is, that's kind of a given. It can grow, but it's a given. I had a patient, she was very, unfortunately, wonderful, very disturbed, even with ECT, electroshock, very, very depressed. And in the hospital unit, the psychiatric hospital. But she told me one thing, and I never forgot it. She had one son who probably was 10 or 11 at the time, or 12. And no matter how disturbed she was, she said, I made a vow that I would never yell at my son. She kept the vow. The kid turned out fine. So no matter what kind of mishigas she had, she knew better than to, and for that, I gave her such credit. I would never yell at my son.
This is unbelievable. I admire her. As somebody who cannot keep such promise. I'm wondering though, when my daughter was younger, we all used to follow a psychologist that said that it is so important to be authentic. Because if you keep yourself there, let's say you're very frustrated, but you will not yell at your son or child, but they will eventually feel this frustration. And in a way, there will be a cognitive dissonance there because they feel that something's wrong, but then mom doesn't show. And in a way, what she taught us was, so express that. Do not yell at your son or kid necessarily, but do express that you're very frustrated right now. And also explain why. Maybe you didn't eat for a long while. Maybe you're very tired because you haven't slept all night. Explain why, but be yourself, be authentic. And that is, I think, like a middle ground that works better for me.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I came yesterday. I took my brother to the airport. I was up at 3 a.m. I was exhausted when I got home. And I come home, and then the kids, all the dishes were not done. and I'm realizing I'm just looking at things. I'm concave. I'm a victim. My kids, they're so mean. They don't clean up. I work hard all day. And I realized I was on that level. It was a level that garbage was going to come out of me.
Yeah.
And I just held it back. But I told him later, I came home, I explained, but I didn't. But it'd be so easy, negative reflex to spit it out, right? And so being authentic, what's the level,
That's
because
correct.
yelling at them is authentic, but not yelling at them and letting them know I wanted to yell at you. But that's authentic with some value.
I love this.
Right?
Authentic with value. That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to adopt this one. Beautiful. It's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah. I'd like to give people advice, just a simple thing, just in dealing with thoughts. Like I said, every thought has a weight. Or if you picture that you're going to be with somebody and you don't want to be with them, your body or that thought or your body starts to close down. And so I have techniques. And one of them, a technique is called circle walk. And,
Uh-huh.
and I'll have people walk in circles in their privacy, in their kitchen, in the room. And I remember starting to do that when I think it was my daughter and she wasn't sleeping and just up in the middle of the night, walking in a circle, holding the baby to try to get back to sleep again, and realizing there was a certain level of fluidity and control over my thoughts when I wasn't just rambling around. I was just walking in a circle. And so then I would change the type of walk and make it a power walk. That's what I love the Paula walk, because it gives me
It
another.
is very power walk.
Yeah, and I'll add it to walking in the circle, or when I first wake up in the morning, I'll say, "Can I get from the bed, to the kitchen with no thoughts, or only power thoughts, or only a Paula walk? How can I control myself?" So
Wow.
those kind of rituals to have, like the circle walk, or things that are going to disrupt. A simple technique that's used often is rubber band. So when you're getting really negative thoughts, you just gently click the rubber band as a way of physically stopping that thought. And then
Mm.
if you pair it with I love you, Jesus, I love you, Moses, or stop. No, it doesn't matter what you pair it with, but just keep the same thing so you get more uh energy if you do the thought and the pairing.
Yeah.
um Rogue thoughts. Rogue thought is something that we all have here and there, but if someone found out, we could like they'd put us in an institution or in a jail. It's like a
What is that?
rogue thought is like a bizarre thought. It's
Oh.
like a thought that if anybody knew, you'd be ashamed.
Hmm.
And when I have rogue thoughts, I have the imagery of samurai with lasers, just immediately get that thought out of your brain. So develop some tools for those rogue thoughts.
Oh,
And
okay.
another thing I'd like to talk about, but this may
Wait,
be
but these are not good thoughts? Isn't it good to
no,
kind of look up
rogue thoughts are not good thoughts.
are not
Rogue
good?
thoughts will are I mean,
I'll have to look up
one
the term.
extreme rogue is just like a gangster that doesn't belong, but look, if you look at the worst rogue thoughts are women with postpartum depression. They love this baby and they want to kill the baby. What the hell is this?
Right.
I had a patient once decades ago. She loved her father, but when she was visiting him, she couldn't be around a knife because she had a rogue thought. She wants to kill what? Kill my father. I love my father. Rogue thoughts, very
Wow.
deep thoughts. So because you live such a good life, thank God you've never had any of those. But for the most of the rest of us,
I thought about something very different when you said that. I never heard the term, and I'm going to look it up. However, the
I
first
made it up. I made it up. I mean, I
you
made
made
up the word. I put it. It's my idea. Rogue thoughts. It's just disturbed. Quick, boom, boom.
so what I had in mind when you said that was actually a thought that might be a very good thing because but again you will correct me if I'm wrong about the interpretation that I gave here. that here. And that is that my subconscious is bringing up something that maybe I want to pay attention to. Maybe I think that I love my father, but if I cannot be next to a knife when I'm with him, maybe there's something that needs me to address it and to open up and to
Absolutely.
find, to dig a little deeper. No, isn't that
No,
a
that's
good thing in a
absolutely
way?
true. But it doesn't have to be that way. It could
Oh,
just be, I'll tell you, a long time ago, I had a patient. He was in law enforcement, and they were questioning his mental stability because on one of the tests that they have to take, it was asked about thoughts of self-harm, okay, random neural firings. We have random neural firings that we don't have to work through. It doesn't have to mean anything. Just get them out, right? So
I see. Yeah.
their value in some, but you have to know the difference or have someone help you. Which ones are random? Don't identify with them.
Uh-huh.
Do you have the thought or does the thought have
Have
you?
you?
Right?
Okay. I think we're going to end our conversation soon. Am I right? I'm just looking at the clock. The reason I'm asking is because I wanted to make kind of like a quick switch to something else that I've noticed you doing at least twice during our conversation, and I wanted to comment on that, if I may.
Yeah.
I've noticed that at some point you do something like this with your hands over your eyes. Have you noticed it when you talk?
No, but I know I do. I mean, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about this. Is this something that somebody taught you to do, or is it something natural that you just normally do with yourself?
I have many other gestures that I do, and I'll do this, but that I don't do. That I think that is a chain reaction that I have to look into because
I think it's a good thing, and it really caught my attention when you did it the
thank you.
first time, and
That's really
you're
cool.
doing it again. Because I think it releases tension from the area of the eyes. And I think that in kind of conversation like today, when we want to be very concentrated, because it's not really that we're sitting at each other's living room and, no one else is hearing it. It's like a conversation that both of us are aware that other people will listen to. So there's a lot of concentration. So the way I look at it is there is a lot of like inward central line.
It feels clearing. It feels clearing and comforting.
Exactly. And you're kind of taking it to the periphery. It's as if you're clearing out energy or even rejuvenating yourself just by this very, very gentle and quick, almost unintentional movement. It just really caught my mind. And I wanted to comment about this. I think it's a very good thing that you're doing. So
no, thanks for pointing it out. But I'm not just looking in a mirror. I'm looking at a wisdom mirror. You're my wisdom mirror.
Thank you.
And maybe let me tell you one more story, and then we get into
Yeah, I'd love to. I have time, so just go ahead.
This is about symbol cues. My mentor, the one I said who was in the prisoner of war in Japan, he was an artist. I was paintings on the wall, but he had one kind of a quirky thing is that when he was maybe in his 20s, 30s, I don't know, if he was with a woman and she would gently stroke his face, he would have severe anxiety. He would get very anxious. It didn't make any sense, right? But I think it's how we get wired. And so after many, many years, and he's a psychologist, he realized when he was taken prisoner and he was put in a ship, and in the ship, they brought many, many, many Americans, and they strapped him in, and there was not much room between the next soldier, and it was tatami bamboo, and crossing the ocean, he's tied down, not knowing if he's going to live or die, and this gentle bamboo striking his face, and that stroking stayed imprinted as a negative, psychological chain reaction.
Obviously, and that's amazing. Oh my God, just think about it, that it can be perceived in a completely different environment as something pleasurable, or at least what do we call it?
Comforting, soothing.
Comforting, soothing, exactly. But in his case, it was so threatening, and the body was in such tension that even at a different situation and environment, it is still
and
connected.
one more thing, that's, one of the treatments now they're doing for post-traumatic stress, severe post-traumatic stress causes dissociation. If someone's being attacked or violated, they'll leave their body.
Right.
And so in the treatment, what the therapist is doing is when the patient realizes they're in a stressful situation, they're starting to leave their body, the therapist says, every time you do that, I want you to scratch your arm or rub your leg, and to snap you back into the body. So it's kind of more along your line of the physical, mental stress.
Yeah. Wow, what a story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting story. All right, Jeffrey, I think we will continue with our conversation at another time. But for today, we will wrap it up.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for bringing this idea to my brain in the first place. I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for your time and this unbelievable conversation that taught me a lot. There are 2 movies that I'm going to watch now. And I will just say goodbye to our listeners. Thank you so much for being with us for another free-form conversation today with Dr. Jeffrey Friedman. And take care. I'll see you next time.